The purge carries on. Elon Musk and Donald Trump's campaign to hollow out the federal government is in overdrive this weekend, but not everyone seems to be on the same page. After Musk's ultimatum saying in a post on X that federal employees must respond to an email justifying their jobs or else resign, leaders at several agencies have instructed their employees not to respond. Even FBI Director Kash Patel, a true Trump loyalist, told his team to pause any responses to Musk's email, saying the FBI will review the work of its employees using its own procedures. Today, NBC News has new reporting on this idea that Trump and Musk have been floating about sending Doge dividends to American taxpayers. Amazingly, the idea came when a man posted about it on X, getting Musk's attention, who then took the idea to Trump. And based on our reporting, Trump liked the idea so much that he started floating it on stage in Miami last week. But if these Doge checks ever come, according to the plan being floated now, low-income Americans would not receive the checks. This fake populism that we're seeing from Trump is nothing new, but it gives us a window into how we should be both assessing and combating the Trump presidency. When Donald Trump first ran for president back in 2016, he ran as an anti-politician and a populist. Before he defeated Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party, he destroyed what was left of the unpopular and discredited Republican Party. Yes, he did so using nativism and racism, pledging to build a wall to keep Mexicans out and ban Muslims. But he also mixed in some real economic populism. Remember this?
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25%, they can't afford private. But
universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of, much better than they're taken care of now.
The uninsured person is going to be taken care of.
They're going to be taken care of.
How?
I would make a deal with existing hospitals to take care of people. And you know what? This is probably...
Make a deal. Who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side.
Yes, that was presidential candidate Donald Trump sounding like Bernie Sanders, promising government-backed health care for all. It's obvious that those days are long gone in Trump's Republican Party. Forget about universal health care today. Today's Donald Trump is backing the House GOP budget plan that would result in huge cuts to Medicaid, which is government-backed health care for the poor. And don't forget about Trump's closing message in 2016, because if you change a few words and images, it could have come from a left-wing economic populist. Promises to take on Wall Street, fight the donor class and special interests who he claimed to reject money from because he was so rich. This obviously is laughable in the moment that we find ourselves in. Trump's campaigns were completely reliant on special interest money, oil companies, foreign entities, tech and crypto bros. Elon Musk, Miriam Adelson, the list goes on. Trump openly sold his policies to the highest bidders from the comfort of his country club in Florida. There's been a lot of talk about how Republicans have bent the knee to Donald Trump. He's completely taken over the party and everyone must grovel and kiss the ring. But the reason so many Republicans are comfortable kissing the ring is because Trump has already given in to them where it matters. He's not an economic populist that wants to guarantee health care for all. He's not following Ivanka's lead on abortion rights or gay rights. In fact, he's doing the opposite. And his White House is largely being run by the Heritage Foundation's Russell Vought. Yes, the same Heritage Foundation that has been empowering the Republican Party and the corporate takeover of America for decades since Ronald Reagan. When figuring out how to confront Trump over these past 10 years, Democrats have come up with all sorts of ways to frame him. He's a Russian asset, a Putin stooge. He's a racist, a sexist. He's a cult leader. And some of those charges are more valid than others, of course. But there is a simpler way of looking at who Donald Trump is and what he is doing to the country right now. He is a Republican, a country club Republican. And with his top donor and the world's richest man backing him and the Heritage Foundation running the show, he's not fighting against the powers that be that he promised he would. Instead, he's handing the government over to them. Kicking us off tonight is David Sirota, founder and editor-in-chief of The Lever. He's also the Oscar-nominated writer of the hit film Don't Look Up. David, it's great to have you on the show. You wrote about Project 2025 during the campaign, saying that Project 2025 actually started half a century ago and that a Trump win would solidify it. And that's simply part of this GOP and Heritage Foundation master plan that they've been pushing since the late 70s. Explain what's happening right now.
So Project 2025 is the latest iteration of something called Mandate for Leadership, which was the policy agenda that the Heritage Foundation has been putting out since 1980. They claim that 60% of their first Mandate for Leadership in 1980 was embraced and enacted by Ronald Reagan. The Heritage Foundation came to be the central policy wing of the conservative movement, starting in the 1970s with an infusion of donations from Joseph Coors. We recount this in our audio series Master Plan, where the Heritage Foundation becomes the policy engine. Russell Vought, who you mentioned, who runs the Trump White House Office of Management and Budget, really running much of the show here. Russell Vought comes from the Heritage Foundation. So what we're seeing right now is the enactment of the Heritage Foundation's vision, which is a vision trying to significantly reduce the federal government and importantly, trying to say that the executive branch, that the civil service protections for the executive functions of the government can be highly politicized, can be gutted out and then replaced with Trump loyalists. That is Russell Vought's central proposal, the so-called Schedule F proposal. And when we look at these firings right now, we should look at them through the prism of trying to pack apolitical, nonpartisan government jobs with highly political, highly ideologically motivated Trump loyalists.
David, you know, we saw Elon Musk with his chainsaw theatrics this weekend at CPAC, saying that it was to highlight the cost-cutting his made-up government department is doing. I wonder if Musk, like Trump himself, is out there getting all this attention, distracting us while the Russell Vougts of the world, the ones that you were just talking about, working behind the scenes, doing the ugly work below the radar, turning the government over to private interests, wealthy donors, corporations. Is there something to that? Are we too focused on the shiny, loud object, but not to the ones that are doing this serious generational damage to our democracy?
I think there's definitely something to that, and I think we have to remember the numbers here. It costs about $300 billion a year, the total federal workforce, $300 billion a year. That is a minuscule part of the federal budget, and yet Musk and Vogt are focused on cutting that part of the government. What they haven't focused on is the much larger amount of spending by the government on private contractors. Elon Musk happens to be the major shareholder, in some cases the founder and owner, of some of the largest government contractors in the country. So what you're seeing is not just an effort to reduce the relatively small part of the budget that's spent on employees, but to turn that part of the government into a political weapon packed with, again, ideological and political loyalists, but not talk about how we make the government actually more efficient by reducing the amount of government services that rely on, in many cases, much more expensive government contractors. Why aren't we talking about that? Because the richest man in the world who's helping Russell Vought run the show is a beneficiary of the status quo when it comes to private contracting.
Hey, David, we knew a long time ago, I think for people who've been following Trump, that he was never going to be an economic populist, even though he pretended to be one in 2016. His biggest legislative win by far in his first term was this tax cut for the rich, just like any Republican would have done. And yet in November, he won the working class, won with voters making less than $100,000 per year. If his man of the people routine is so obviously fake, how is he making gains with working class voters? How did he manage to pull that off?
It's a great question. I think there are two factors. I think inflation, he was able to make an anti-incumbent argument. And let's remember, in presidential races, I mean, we've had multiple elections where the incumbent party, both in Congress, by the way, and at the presidential level, have been thrown out. Americans keep voting for change. They're clearly unhappy. But I also think it's worth saying that the Democratic Party for years has not embraced a kind of populist message. The Democratic Party has been allowed itself to be the party that pushed through NAFTA, President Clinton. It was the party that helped deregulate Wall Street, which created the financial crisis. The Obama administration promised to deal with that and then took hope and change and made it more of the same by taking all of that energy promising to crack down on Wall Street and turning it into a massive Wall Street bailout while millions of people got foreclosed on. The point being that the Democratic Party has not portrayed itself as a populist alternative to right-wing populism, creating effectively the conditions for a fake populist like Donald Trump to win.
So you've described the problem for the Democrats, which leads me perfectly to the question I wanted to ask you. As an observer of this and somebody who follows this very closely, what do you think the Democrats in the House and the Senate need to do to confront Trump and Musk at this moment? How should they be going after them? What's the largest story Democrats should be telling and doing based on what you just described over their shortcomings over the last several years?
I think first and foremost, they need to be telling a corruption story every single day about what is really going on, what this is all about. But I also think the party needs to put forward an alternative vision, a vision that says we are going to be serious about a new kind of populism that contrasts with right-wing populism. And then finally, I think the party needs to be gumming up the works wherever it can. Democratic senators, certain Democratic senators gave votes to Donald Trump's nominees. There's going to be a budget fight right now coming up. Chuck Schumer has already preemptively said we're going to try to avoid a shutdown. Now, I'm not saying a shutdown's a good thing, but preemptively retreating doesn't seem like the kind of strategy you want. You had the House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, saying we have no leverage. I mean, the fact that the party reelected its same leadership after losing the election says that there's still this idea that the Democratic Party doesn't have to change when very clearly it does. Or as you say, we're going to lose the last shreds of democratic, small d democratic institutions that we have.